All right, welcome to Designing Performance, where we're going to take you through the Regents and how to use the calculator. So what I'm going to show you here is how you can leverage the calculator for success on this exam. Now this works for all types of students. If I'm a student that finishes this exam in 35 minutes and I have to sit there, well, why don't I go through with the calculator and check my work? And if I'm a student that has struggled with math all year and I need to pass this exam, this is a bridge to success. So let's get started. Now, what I'm going to show you on this test are going to be very cool features that you may or may not already know. A lot of them are really straightforward. Some of them are going to be very difficult, and I'm going to be honest, probably not worth doing, but I'm going to show you anyway, and I'll call it out as we go. So my first question is, a parabola is graphed. Which is the equation of the axis of symmetry? Now, I know, I'm a student and I know axis of symmetry cuts right through the middle, but I also struggle with, is that x equals or is that y equals? If I go into my y equals, I do not have an x option. So I'm going to show you a hack. You need the number 9 and you need it 9 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now my first choice says x equals 3. So I am going to enter x minus 3. And when I go to graph, that will graph my vertical line. That's it. I look at it, that's my answer. Now, some of you are telling me, right, but if I go into apps and go to inequals, I now have the x equals button. And I can do the same exact thing, and that is 100% accurate. But if you have an older model and don't have that installed, the 9 trick is perfect for this. So question 1, completely done on the calculator. Question number 2. I know product means multiply. I'm hoping students remember what these mean. This is as straightforward as root 25 times root 2. I see my answer is a decimal. I'm hoping I recognize that can't be a natural number. It cannot be an integer. And now if I'm not sure, I'm at least at a 50% guess. Otherwise, I recognize it's a decimal, and so it's answer choice 1. 2 questions on the test, both of them done on the calculator. Question 3. When f is graphed and g is graphed, where are they equal? Now, I may not even understand what this means. Then what I'm hoping is they see the word graphed and they go into their calculator and graph this. So I'm going to turn my inequals off just for a second. I want the absolute value of 4x plus 2. So alpha window, absolute value of 4x plus 2. I want 3x plus 5. I hit graph. Now again, if I'm taking the mindset of a student who may not understand this, I saw graph. I figured let's graph it. I may not understand what this is asking, but when I look at the graph intuitively, they cross. So maybe I'm asking where they cross. So I see they cross at -1, but that is not one of my choices. Do they cross at regular 1, positive 1? No. Do they cross at 2? No. Do they cross at 3? I'm going to guess yes, but we also know that we can do the intersect button. First function, second function, and go up near where they cross. And I cross at 3. First 3 questions on the Regents, 100% calculator. Question 4. Yes, you can do this. In fact, I tell my students, I see equivalent, I am thinking second math. Now to do this, I need to store something as x. So I'm going to pick 2.5. I'm going to store that as my x value and lock it in. Why 2.5? I don't know, that's the first number I thought of. But don't pick 0 or 1. Otherwise, you're fine. I'm going to type in my expression, x squared minus 26x minus 120. Now I know some of you are going to tell me I can do that and hit enter, see what that equals, and then do the same for each of them. 100% accurate. I can go second math, and these are my operators. I want to know, is this expression equal to x plus 4, x minus 30? X minus 30. I got choice 1, answer 1. This is Boolean. 1 means true, 0 means false. I know my answer is choice 1. Now, I tell my students, if I get true on my first shot, keep going. You want to make sure you didn't enter something wrong. So I'm going to test to make sure I'm not getting true for everything. I've got x minus 4 and x plus 30. 0 means false, so I know my answer is choice 1. I've got 4 questions on the Regents, all 4 done on the calculator. Oh, we just talked about it. Equivalent. Well, I just said what we do. If something's equivalent, I'm going to test it out. So 3 minus 2 root 5. 3 minus 2 root 5 plus 6 root 5. Equivalent. Second math. Is that equal to 7 root 5? 0 means false, so I know it is not equal to that. Is this equal to 3 plus 4 root 5? 1 means true. First 5 questions on the Regents, completely calculator. Now question 6 is an interpretation question. You cannot do that. Question 7, which represents a function, cannot do that. Question 8, what is the original price? So yes, you can do this in the calculator. The reason why I'm going to not count it is because they have to graph it and then zoom in and out to recognize that you are starting at 500 on the y-axis. So I'm not going to count this as a calculator, but they could do this. Question 9, a literal equation cannot be done on the 84. You could only do that on the n-spire. When solving the following systems, he did substitution, cannot do on the calculator. First 10 questions, first 5 on the calculator. Inequalities in a number line, 100%. If I go in to a y equals, I've got 4 plus 3x. We've got a greater than sign, so I'm going into test, second math. That is greater than 9 minus 7x. I go to graph. Remember, 0 is false, 1 is true. My graph points to the right. I immediately cross off choice 1 and choice 4. Is my graph starting at a half or at 2? Starting at a half, my answer is choice 3. First 11 questions, 6 on the calculator. Interpretation question, no. Which models exponential decay? You can do this on the calculator. I'm not going to count it because you would have to put each table into a list and look at it to see which looks like decay. So I'm not going to count this one. 13 questions, 6 on the calculator. If f of x equals root x plus 1 plus 5, I'm just plugging 3 in. This is a calculator question. I've got 7 of 14. Question 15. Isabella wants to shift the graph. 3 units left. I may not remember how that works, but I know visually what left looks like. So I'm going to put my x plus 5 squared minus 2. And I know this is my graph, and if I want to go 3 left, this needs to be shifted that way. So let's try each choice. My first choice here, x plus 2 squared minus 2. That's a shift to the right, so that is not accurate. Let's try again. My second one, x plus 8 squared minus 2. Oh, 100%. My blue graph moved left to my red graph. Answer choice 2. 15 questions, 8 on the calculator. What are the zeros of x squared minus 36? Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, I've shown you how to solve equations, but I'm going to remind you here, if I want to solve an equation, I'm going to go into the math button. I'm going to click up, and I have this beautiful thing called numerical solver, numeric solve. E1 and E2. E1 means left side. E2 means right side. So I'm looking at 0 for my left side. My right side. Now, if I look, I've got implied multiplication here. So I'm going to actually put the multiplication symbol in. I've got x times x squared minus 36. 0 equals x squared minus 36. I'm going to say okay. Now, for each and every one of you, you're going to have just some random number sitting in here. When you do this, you will always change that to a 10 and hit solve. You're saying, oh, I think the answer is 10. The calculator is going to correct you and say, no. Answer is 6. Now, when I do this with my students, I put 10. It gives me an answer. I go negative 10. Gives me the other answer. So now I'm looking at my choices. I know it's not choice 1 because that doesn't have any 6's in it. I know it's not choice 2 because it doesn't have a negative 6. So I'm left with these two. Now, one thing that I'm hoping my students remember is if I've got x times an x squared, I'm going to get an x to the third. If I'm going to get an x to the third, that means I'm more than likely at this level going to have 3 answers. When that is the case, I do x equals 10, I do x equals negative 10, and I do x equals 0. My 3 answers give me choice 4. 16 questions, 9 on the calculator. Again, I am going to admit some of this, yes, you do have to know some of the concepts to be able to understand it. Question 17, I've got a point. It lies on the parabola that I have been so graciously given. When I come up here, I'm going to type in my negative x squared minus x plus 6. I know I've got the point negative 6 as my y value. I'm going to go to table and just look for negative 6. And it happens at negative 4 and 3. 17 questions, 10 on the calculator. I've got a two-way frequency, not on the 84. Conversion, not on the 84. Which expression is, okay, here's a test. We talked about equivalent. I'm going to store something as x. Lock it in. I'm going to put my question component in. Negative 2x squared raised to the third. Equivalent. I'm going to go into second math, my equal sign, and let's type out my choices. Is this equivalent to 2x to the fifth? Remember, 0 means false. It's not choice 1. I'm going to bring this back down. All right, is it equivalent to negative 8x to the sixth? 1 means true. I know my answer is choice 4. 20 questions, 11 on the calculator. Rate of change, no. When this is subtracted from that, yeah, you could do this in the calculator, but you have to, the obstacle kids have to get past is understanding subtracted from. So if they don't get that, using the calculator is probably a moot point. I got x squared plus 2x minus 5. From that, I'm going to subtract 2x squared minus 3x plus 4. So I'm going to remind you of this because I may have misspoken. I've got x squared plus 2x minus 5. I'm going to subtract 2x squared minus 3x plus 4. We're going to test this out. So is that equal to, and I'm going to run through my choices. For the sake of time, I'm just going to put it in. Answer 1 means true. 22 questions, 12 of them on the calculator. Which equation has the same solution? Solution means solve. I'm going to go into math. I'm going to go up to numeric solver. I've got my E1 is x squared minus 6x. I've got my E2 is 24. Remember, I'm going to change this to 10. So I know one of my answers is 8.7. I'm going to change it to negative 10. My other answer is negative 2.7. I'm going to go through my answer choices. So use this space for computation. I'm going to write my two answers off to the side. And then to go back into, if I click up, that takes me back to E1 and E2. If I get lost, I'll just quit, go home, and start all over again. I'm going to put in my answer choices again for the sake of time. I'm going to just show you x minus 3 squared and 33. I'm going to change this to 10. Why 10? I don't know. That's what I picked. You want to pick something far enough from 0 on both the positive and negative side. It says, no, it's not 10. It's 8.74. I put in negative 10. Negative 2.7. 23 questions, 13 on the calculator, and a sequence question I'm not going to deal with. So I think this test needed 14 or 15 questions on part 1 just to pass. I've already got 13. Let's look at part 2. Solve the equation. This does not say algebraically. You can do this straight in the calculator. You can get full credit for that, as long as you write your steps out. My E1, 14x. My E2, I've got implied multiplication, so 3 times 1 plus 2x minus 4x. We've talked about it a bunch of times. I'm going to say x is 10. It's going to go, nope, it's 0.25. It's a quarter. I'm going to say, well, then x is negative 10. No, it's a quarter. X equals a quarter. I write my button steps out. Full credit. Graph this over the interval. So we know how to graph. Just going to go in 3 times 2 raised to the x. There's my graph. There's my table. I just have to hope they understand or recognize I'm only looking at negative 1 to 2. Question 26, full credit. 27. Yes, you can do this in the calculator. It is difficult. I'm going to show it to you because I think it's cool. This is hard. I realistically don't believe students will do this. It's worth showing because you may get 1 or 2, but I'm throwing it out there. I don't expect kids to do this. I'm going to go into y equals. I'm going to type in 2x plus 3 times negative 6x squared plus 5x minus 1. Going to type that in. I'm going to go to my table and I'm going to pick just 4 points. I'm going to say let's highlight these 4. Now, part of what the student needs to recognize, product, and we just talked about it. If I multiply, I need them to realize that this x and this x squared will give me x cubed. That's the heavy lift here. If they know that, I'm going to go into stat. I'm going to go into edit. I'm going to put those values in. So it was negative 1, 0, 1, and 2. I'm going to put in their corresponding values, negative 12, negative 10. Let's see what it was. I'm sorry, negative 12, negative 3. Let's go back and fix that. Negative 3, negative 10, and I think it was negative 105. So again, this is going to rely on them recognizing that component. If they recognize it's cubic, they will go into stat, they will go into calc, and they will pick a cubic regression. This is my equation. This is my function, I should say. I'm going to type that in to make sure it works. Negative 12x to the third minus 8x squared plus 13x minus 3. If I've done this right, when I multiply these two polynomials, this is my product. When I graph, they lay on top of each other. I have expressed the product in standard form. It does not say how to do it. I write my calculator steps out. That is full credit. Test scores as a box plot. Well, we're going to go into edit. We're going to go into a table. We'll put our values in. So 83, 87, 90, 94, 94, 93, 95, 70, 72, 83, 85, 88, 98. I'm going to count. I've got 13 values. If I look at my calculator, I have 13 values. I want a box plot. I come into my graph. This talks about plots. Second y equals, I need my plot to be on. I'm going to come down to type and I'm going to say I want a box plot. Now important, plot needs to be on. Because I am doing statistics, I need to go zoom stat. That gives me my box plot. Now I need to know what those values are. So if I hit trace, I know my minimum's at 70, Q1 is 83, median 88, Q3 94, max 98. I can get my 5-num sum from here. I've got my box plot. First 4 questions in part 2 are all calculator. 29 you cannot do, 30 you cannot do. You have already passed this exam. 31 you can, but it's a lot of moving the graph around. Quadratic formula. I don't remember the quadratic formula. Well, if you go into apps, you have PLYSMLT2, wherever that is in your calculator. Your first choice is Polyroot Finder. This has a degree of 2. Let's put them in. 2x squared minus 4x minus 3. When I solve, these are my answers. I have not looked at the grading rubric. This would count as 2 conceptual errors. Was not quadratic formula, was not simplest radical form. If you can give a point for 2 conceptual errors, you've got 1 point and not 0 for not knowing the quadratic formula. Linear regression, we know how to do that in the calculator, I hope. Solve the following systems graphically. Question 34. So I'm going to come out of here. I'm going to go into a graph. I need to take plot off. I always forget to do that, but you need to take plot off. If you do not have the inequals button, you can still graph inequalities. You slide all the way over. When you hit enter, as you scroll through, this means greater than, that means less than. So I want to be less than. On the 84, you cannot do 2y. You could do that on the n-spire. So I'm going to have my students set up their fraction bar. They're going to put x plus 6 over 2. There's my first inequality. This is going to be greater than, so I'm going to come in. I'm going to change that to an up. I'm going to have them move the 2x over. Now watch what happens. Oh my God, what is that? Remember, you were in stat. You've got to go back to Zoom standard, and here's your graph. If you go into table, you've got your values. You may want to have them do one graph at a time. Question 34, you're at least getting some points on this, and you've passed the Regents. So I want you to look at what we've done. It's a lot. I may have gone fast, but take the opportunity to rewind a few times. But I have just shown you on the January 2026 Regents how you can use the TI-84 for success. I hope you take it, use it with your students, and good luck. Enjoy the testing season.